A 2-0 start and Rochester Adams coming to town. The Lakers football team has a pretty solid idea of its identity thus far in the 2025 season. But what's it going to take to defeat Tony Petrito's Veer offense and the surging 2-0 Rochester Adams Highlanders? Here with more insight on that and more from our Laker football team is our color commentator, Matt Catoni. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good to have you on after another 37-0 victory. A lot of the same from West Bloomfield in week number 2, with some obvious differences that might be a little concerning as you go into week number 3 with Rochester Adams coming to town. Matt, will begin particularly on top of all the good, the one glaring bad you look at with a huge question mark with the Highlanders coming to town is all of those penalties in week number 2.
Yeah, really, penalties are, we talked about throughout the games, were the only thing that you're kind of looking the Lakers to eliminate going into that second game, and they kind of still had some questionable penalties at times. And that's one thing you absolutely cannot have against a team like Rochester Adams, who is ranked 14th in the state, I believe, right now. And those type of mistakes in extending drives or even keeping yourself off the field on offense can kill you in these games against Rochester Adams.
Yeah, penalties last year cost the Lakers on average about 8 yards a pop. That certainly had an impact on them. On Friday against Southfield A&T, it delayed many of their drives. It gave Southfield A&T second chances. Ultimately, their defense dominant enough throughout that performance to not make those extra opportunities for Southfield A&T a problem. But that can really be an issue against a team like Rochester Adams, who's coming off a blowout of their own against a much more formidable team on paper in Rochester High School, with Ryland Rhino Waters coming into town, their quarterback. Still a plenty of talent in the skills position. What are you looking for the Lakers defense to do in week number 3, Matt, to step up even further after a couple of stellar performances and back-to-back shutouts?
Yeah, it kind of goes in line with how we were talking about penalties, and that's discipline. You mentioned the Veer offense, kind of the staple of Rochester Adams offense. And that's where that discipline is going to have to come into play. You're going to need to see guys like Jeremiah Benson and Isaiah Gray kind of maintain that lane discipline and not necessarily allowing Ryland Waters to burn them on those option plays.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game for them. Rochester Adams, one of those powerhouses of this division. They made a deep playoff run last year, even without Rhino Waters in the ballgame. He was injured for much of their playoff run in 2024. But this is really the first big test for West Bloomfield. And the biggest question that I would think is the case with this team is you look at two consecutive shutouts. You look at 7 starters returning for this defense. 2 dominant performances. Now you've got the question that will be answered in week number 3. Is this defense as dominant as it's looked in weeks 1 and 2, or was it a result of the competition? Matt, your thoughts?
Well, right now, heading into this game, you have to feel very confident in the Lakers' chances, given how dominant that trench play has been. And that's going to be, the biggest thing that we're going to look for in this matchup against Rochester Adams. Can that defensive line be as dominant and as big of a force as it has been these first 2 weeks? And also, you look to the quarterback situation. Jackson Carver has been phenomenal so far, but this is really his first big test, and we'll be able to see how he performs or if the Lakers are going to have to, kind of put some more on Jamal Shakespeare's plate if the offense starts to struggle.
Yeah, we'll get more on the offense in just a moment, but the third phase of the game that often goes unthought about in the game of football is the special teams front. And for West Bloomfield, they've had a couple of really impressive performances in that particular area of the game. It helped that there were some issues carrying the football on Friday last week for Southfield A&T that came into play. But even that being said, a couple of takeaways on kickoff returns or breakups on kickoff returns, including one where Bryce Tillman was able to take a kickoff return for a touchdown for West Bloomfield in these opening couple of weeks. And last week, of course, a short kickoff that ended up with a Laker recovery. The special teams has been quite special in the first 2 weeks as well.
Yeah, and really a lot of that comes down to coaching and team mentality. And that's one thing about this team, whether they're on offense or defense or special teams, they like to hit. And really the prime example of that is that kickoff recovery where Mario Rocha flies down the field and hits the nearest Southfield A&T tight end to just make sure that they're not able to recover the ball. He's not necessarily flying down there half-cocked trying to just get the football. He's going down there with purpose and just hitting the closest guy. And that's really the best way to describe this Lakers team. They like to hit.
And they play physical and they play smart, but also on top of that, when you have a team that's being able to make those kinds of heads-up plays, take the football back in the special teams front and then make the most out of it, it makes an opposing team game plan around that in the special teams front. Maybe you are going to kick to those kickoff returners that have that speed and ability in the open field, but they're dangerous in their own right. Like I mentioned, Bryce Tillman-Jones just a couple of weeks back, a 60-yard touchdown return for West Bloomfield, 60 yards. Obi Duru, he has 2 kickoff returns so far this season, 44 yards in total. That's a 22-yard average. That can get you to the 35, to the 45-yard line, even into plus territory on those shorter kicks. And Christian Banks also picking up at least 1 kickoff return so far this season, although it was a fair catch for no gain. So they got weapons in that front too, which can make them really dangerous in the special teams. What has been the surprise for the Lakers so far in these first 2 weeks, putting up 37 points a pop in each of those first 2 games. But overall, their offense seems like the chemistry is really gelling, Matt, which is quite surprising when you have 4 returning starters and the other 7, much of them getting their first varsity experience in this season.
Yeah, and really, you mentioned that chemistry, and that's what stands out on the tape, because you see these playmakers, they fly downfield to make blocks for each other. And that's really just the biggest key to this offense. Everyone is a willing blocker, and you never necessarily know where the ball is going or who the ball is going to be going to with this kind of Hydra type offense with Jamal Shakespeare, Joel Evans, Will Espy. There's just a plethora of weapons on offense that they can get the ball to. And with everyone being so willing to do their job, it just makes the offense that much more effective.
5 rushers for the Lakers already with at least 1 rushing touchdown in these first 2 weeks. That goes to talk about that offensive line that is only returning 1 starter from last year in the left tackle, Travis Robertson, who's going to Bowling Green State next fall. Quite surprising considering when you have a rushing game like that needs to get these rushers out into those speed sweeps, particularly guys like Obi Duru, guys like Jamal Shakespeare, who likes to run right up the gut and is a little bit smaller in stature. The blocking has been excellent. It is set up for 5 guys on this team to have at least 1 touchdown. Will Espy, the lone player, with 2 rushing touchdowns on the season. Both of those coming in week number 1, Matt. And overall, the blocking's been excellent for this team, but also the quarterback play. You would think about the old saying from John Madden that if you have 2 quarterbacks, you basically have none. While the Lakers play with 2, most of the reps going to Jackson Carver, who's been incredibly efficient in these first 2 ball games.
Yeah, he's done a tremendous job of especially throwing outside the numbers on hitch routes and out routes. And it's really helped the Lakers at times pick up those 3rd and shorts or 2nd and shorts with just these quick dump off passes to their playmakers that allows them to get out in space. And that's one thing that has been crucial this year with Jackson Carver is his poise. He doesn't necessarily try to do too much. He just lets the game come to him and doesn't try to force anything.
He's been excellent, 8 for 11 for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns in these opening performances for West Bloomfield. Those touchdowns both pretty much bomb passes. One was to Willie Edwards, that 67-yard touchdown bomb in week number 1 at home against Dearborn Fordson on a Thursday night. He answered that also later on in that game, a 31-yard touchdown pass to Joel Davis. Much of the action on the ground last week where Joel Davis also had a big game himself. Overall, these first 2 weeks, averaging 13, almost 14 yards a carry, has a touchdown on the ground and a touchdown in the air. He's been really the breakout star for the Lakers in these first 96 minutes of football.
Yeah, and if there's really, like how I said before, this team loves to hit. If there's one player that really fits that description, it's him. He's on offense, serving as a fullback early in the game, helping kind of wear down the defense, get some rotation in on the defensive line, but then come second half, he's the one pounding the rock and just eating up, as you said, 13 yards per carry. And he's been a very nice foundational piece for the Lakers so far this year because he really adds a power dimension to that offense.
All these skill players, by and large, averaging a significant amount of yardage on each and every play. I go down their rushing numbers. Obi-Duru, 8 yards a carry. Joel Davis, 14 yards roughly a carry. Jamal Shakespeare with 8. Espy with 6. Cam Hall with 5. Those are incredible numbers. That tells you every time you're touching the ball, you're making an impact play. You're efficient. You're moving the football. Third downs aren't even really being an issue because you're not facing them. But Matt, that is all going to change. It is a completely different outlook when you're going up against teams in the OAA Red Division. That's why you want these first 2 weeks to be as clean of football as possible. We talked about the penalties. That's got to get cleaned up. That's on the obvious front. But for the Lakers, what other steps forward are you looking for from them this week in their first big test in the OAA Red Division?
Yeah, really, I just want to see them run the football with the same level of efficiency that they've had the past 2 weeks. I mean, obviously, you're not going to average 13 yards per carry against Rochester Adams, but if they're able to average 5 yards per carry, 6 yards per carry, it'll allow them to maintain those second and shorts, third and shorts, where they're able to run the ball and not necessarily put Jackson Carver in a position where he has to do too much. And also, as always, if you're running the ball well, you're protecting the football, which keeps the ball out of Waters' hands.
And you hate to put the pressure on these high schoolers in week number 3 and start throwing out terms like must-win games. But you look at the first couple of weeks for teams in the OAA Red Division, and those tiebreakers being the out-of-conference results. Rochester Adams coming in 2-0. Oxford coming into this week 2-0. They're taking on Clarkston, so that's going to have OAA Red Division implications. The winner of our game in West Bloomfield on Friday night takes a firm lead atop the OAA Red Division, with Clarkston sitting at 1-1, and they're either going to be 1-2 or 2-1. Lake Orion yet to pick up a win. They had a really tough week number 2, a couple of key injuries in the backfield. This is what makes this week so important for the Lakers. It's not only setting the tone for Red Division play, it gives them a chance to have a breakout week in the very tough division that ultimately does have a big say in the results for the outlook come playoff time.
Yeah, really, you mentioned the other teams in the OAA Red kind of getting off to a sluggish start and ultimately getting a tiebreaker with Rochester Adams. We've seen in years past where those tiebreakers come back into play with, the Lakers even getting OAA Red title in recent years because of it. It's very important to get out to these big starts, and especially playing a team like Rochester Adams where you can just get one step ahead of them early on in the season. It's just crucial to get that title.
Adams winning in week number 1, allowing less than 10 points against Romeo, a team that's had a ton of success in recent years in the MHSAA. And then Rochester last week was a 31-3 blowout for the Highlanders. So they're coming in hot as well. That's going to be a big part of this game, Matt. Both teams are really excited. They want to make a major impact in 2025, and they have a chance to do so on Friday night. Matt, lastly, before I let you go, who are you looking to as sort of the next breakout players in these couple of weeks? We've had some surprises. Cam Hall's been excellent. We've talked a lot about Joel Davis playing in all 3 phases and making big plays. But now you start to see the superstars on your team at the very top of those lists break out and be impact players. At the top of those Lakers leaders, those star players that are likely to have D1 aspirations next year, who are you looking to be the driving force against Rochester Adams on Friday night?
Well, Jamal Shakespeare, I really expect to be a big part of this game, him kind of being that main veteran piece on offense. And then Will Espy, you mentioned he's the only guy with 2 rushing touchdowns on the year so far. But I think he's really their biggest offensive weapon, arguably. And I think this could be the week that we start to see them try to get him the ball more and lean on him a bit more.
Don't be surprised, too, to see Jeremiah Benson start to have a bigger impact on the offensive side of the football, too. He has been huge so far on the defensive side, putting pressure on the quarterback. He was an absolute menace in week number 2 against Southfield A&T. He's playing tight end this year. Those short yardage passes, those checkdowns are going to be huge for West Bloomfield, for Jackson Carver, for Jamal Shakespeare to dump the football out if and when Rochester Adams is able to lock down deep in the secondary. Matt, we'll have plenty more on the West Bloomfield Lakers after their game on Friday night against Rochester Adams, and see you right here on The Splash next week. Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you for having me.